And welcome back into a brand new episode of Tribal Council Chat, the flagship show here at the Reality Realm Network. And as always, we are your hosts. My name is Bruce Heller.
And my name's Brett Parnell.
And let's dive in. So, the 48 finale. What are your overall thoughts on the finale?
Yeah, 48 finale. I thought this was such a well played episode, really, on behalf of everybody that was there, minus one, I guess you could say, lack of strategic play, but that's come to be expected for this season, it seems. But overall, I think pretty much all five players that were here did almost as good as they can to at least end what I think most people have as a kind of lower ranked season out with a couple of great episodes at the end.
Yeah. And honestly, Mitch wasn't the most strategic player, but I love having him on my screen. He's a
Oh,
likable
yeah.
guy. Love his confessionals. He provides a lot still.
And the funny thing is that you went to Mitch. I was actually referring in that case to the other four voting out Mitch and not his play himself.
Oh, well, I heard lack of strategic play, and that's where my mind went.
Yeah, I'm more thinking of just that I'm like, here we go again, typical 48. They're just telling Mitch he's gonna go home.
Yeah. And so I thought for sure that would be Kyle and Kamilla wanting to go after each other that round. It
I
ended
would
up
have thought
being
so
the
too.
next round. But
But either way, want to get it started for day 24.
yeah, for sure. And
So
go ahead.
go ahead.
No, you go.
I was just gonna say, kind of like what you just said. We opened the episode to a point that is a breath of fresh air for this season, where Kyle and Kamilla realized that they both can't sit next to each other at the final in order to win the game.
Yeah, for sure. And we knew this would happen. We kind of saw it in the preview from last week, but they they still all vote Mitch out this round eventually.
Yeah,
But
which was a bit odd to say the least.
we do see that their plan last week went off without a hitch. And someone, I think it's Kamilla, makes a good point. Why didn't Joe fact check with Sauhin last week, or at least bring it up at all? Like, that's crazy to think about.
It is. I to an extent understand it because I guess emotions are probably so high when you're in the final six that it's like you can fact check anything you want and no one trusts anyone to make sure that something is true. So at the
Yeah.
end, you're just going off your instincts. And in the case of Joe and Shaheen, they were wrong.
Yeah, for sure.
But you can just as easily be being played by Shaheen at final six as you are by Kyle.
Yeah. And so we're walking around this morning, we're looking for tree mail, and we see 5 puzzle locks.
Yep.
What are your thoughts when we see this?
Um, this was like, okay, we're going back to the search for the idol, but in this time, it's obviously the finale advantage.
Yeah. We've done this with a finale challenge somewhat recently, I feel like. Maybe 45. I don't remember.
I saw those images up in the trees, and my mind said, good thing for Star's mental sanity that she's on the jury.
Yeah. And so each player is given a puzzle lock with a key inside of it. And the first person to solve the puzzle and get that key gets an advantage in the final 5 immunity challenge.
Yep.
And so this is a fun. While we're all running around, we see a quote from Kamilla that I wrote down where she says, "You can lie and you can deceive. You just can't get caught," which I thought was smart.
Yeah, very smart.
And Eva ends up getting the advantage, and I don't think post merge anyone else has got advantages.
I don't think so, but interesting enough that it's Kyle who almost gets the advantage, but he has another word with the exact same letters. So,
Yeah.
well played in both of them. Kyle puts in the word rescue, gets it wrong. Eva puts in the word secure, which you can make with the exact same letters and is correct and wins the advantage.
That's got to be frustrating.
Yeah.
Almost like the blotch challenge where Joe had his eye turned to the wrong color.
Yeah.
Also frustrating, but
definitely has to be frustrating, but at the same time, I mean, I think it makes sense that Eva would have won in this situation. Secure is much more of a like immunity challenge-esque word than rescue
sure.
is. So
Not as immunity challengey as Got Fun Betrayal, but
yeah,
close.
That's gonna live on forever.
I hope it does. That'd make a great t-shirt. So we get to the final 5 challenge, and the way it works is we race up and over a steep ramp and go under a muddy net, and we're freeing this ball, and we need to toss a ball into a basket that will reveal numbers to us. And we use those numbers to release a key. This is so complicated. And the key unlocks puzzle pieces, and the big flame puzzle. And the first person to complete that puzzle wins immunity.
And because Eva has an advantage, instead of throwing the ball, she gets to slam dunk the ball.
Which is kind of a crappy advantage in hindsight because a lot of people got the ball on the first toss.
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on the other players, but I still think it's a decent advantage in the grand scheme of the challenge.
It's definitely a decent advantage. That doesn't mean that, like, in this specific challenge, it ended up being not that helpful.
Fair.
So,
but at least it was still a lot more helpful than Joe's puzzle skills.
Well, yeah.
So we see, as I just hinted at, Joe gets to the puzzle mat first, finishes the challenge doesn't finish the challenge, but ends up in 4th by the time that it's done, as he's passed not only by eventual winner Kamilla, who has a huge come from behind, but also by Kyle, also by Eva.
Yeah.
And that, go ahead.
We're also playing for reward. We're going to the sanctuary where good things happen for pasta to refuel us for the next challenge.
In addition to playing for reward in typical 48 season, we're playing for the right to choose Eva to come on reward with us.
I am an Eva fan, and even I am confused by this concept. It's hysterical, honestly.
Yeah.
Right.
Which, I mean, only got funnier when at camp Eva was talking about how hungry she is, and I'm like, you're the most full person in New Era Survivor history, so...
If anyone other than Eva had complained about Mary doing that with the coconuts,
yeah,
nobody would mind. It's only because it's Eva.
It wouldn't have even made, it wouldn't have probably even made the show.
Yeah. But... So, we're playing for reward. Pasta, like he said, Kamilla wins, takes Eva. And I wrote down in my notes here, welp, I was wrong, because I thought Kamilla was going at 5.
Yeah.
So.
And I thought that Mitch was going at 5, as per previous discussion. So I was right, even though I don't think it was the smartest move.
We go to the sanctuary where good things happen. And yes, that's its name. Yeah, and Eva says that tonight is an easy vote. It'll be Mitch, and she's trusting everyone will do that. And at this point, I was wondering, is everyone going to do that? Will it flip somehow? But it did not. So
yeah, it just looked the whole way that vote was edited through. You could just tell after like 2 seconds. At the beginning of all the discussions, I was going, well, Eva and Kamilla aren't here yet. So Kyle needs to be careful. He's still only talking to Joe. Joe could just as easily turn the vote on Kyle coming up soon. But then once they all came back and you just see everyone talking to Mitch, it's like, okay, this is the most predictable vote of all time.
Yeah, for sure. And so we go back to
I
camp.
mean, maybe not as predictable as the entire sort of favorites tribe voting out Brandon Hance in the middle of a challenge, but almost.
Yeah. Well, we go back to camping. We get a little bit of wavering from Kamilla. She has this choice to make between Mitch and Joe. They tried to play it up like this was a big thing. I really never thought there was a chance
Yeah.
of turning.
But I also found this really part of the season and how part of how final plays out in that the decision is clearly Mitch. We see that coming. It's an obvious vote. But at the same time, it shows how little Kamilla is worried about losing to Joe or to Eva at this point of the game.
Yeah.
And that Kamilla knows her only competition is Kyle, and Kyle knows his only competition is Kamilla, even though they've built Joe and Eva up to be this dominant power couple from day one.
Everyone's been so afraid of Joe the whole season, and like people have wanted him out because they think he's the biggest threat. Now he's at the end, and all of a sudden, no one's afraid of him anymore.
But I think that what happened. I do though. That's the really important part of this is that Joe is a threat because he continues to win immunity challenges. But by the time you get to the end of the game and you see something like the Sauhin vote play out, all of a sudden Joe's threat level is completely decreased because his only resume move is immunity challenges and that he built that bond with Eva on day one.
I think if the Sauhin vote didn't happen and they didn't get played that hard, he would have still had a chance to win. I think that's what killed it.
I could see that. But that's what I'm getting at is that now those Kyle and Kamilla both have such a stronger resume than just I won 4 challenges.
Yeah. And so we see Kamilla tell Mitch that she's decided like she's voting for him because he's a threat, because he's so likable.
Yeah.
They kind of all tell him this. They all tell him that this is a sign of respect, that they're voting him out because he's so well liked. And like I appreciate, like if I were a player, I'd appreciate them letting me know, even if I can't change it. Like
yeah, absolutely.
And then my note here,
notably because Eva is still in the spot that she's in, and she hasn't made her kind of like minuscule move for the jury yet, which she'll do at this tribal council. But because she hasn't played what she's been holding on to in her bag, they know there's not something that Mitch can just go and find.
Yeah, I thought we'll get to this. I thought she did a pretty strong job at Final Tribal, honestly.
Yeah, I agree.
But my next note after everyone telling Mitch he's going is I wrote Mitch is sad, and that makes me sad.
Yeah.
I just felt for him here. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Mitch is such a cool, likable guy. I felt bad for him there.
Yeah, he had an amazing game, especially to be in the minority of his tribe and then lose charity pre-merge and then still make it all the way to 5. That's impressive.
Yeah. Could have possibly made it farther if he hadn't been waiting for the exact perfect moment to do something. But
yeah.
So Final 5 tribal, I really don't have any notes from that tribal. Like we said, Mitch goes home.
Yeah.
Going forward here, though, Final 4 is 2 different duos. And this is what I wrote down is imagine if this was still a vote, we might have gone to fire anyway.
Yeah, we absolutely could. But unfortunately, we still have one more season at least coming up of forced fire making challenges. We'll see what happens with the fan vote, but I kind of already have an idea of what's going to happen with the fan vote, even without hearing from CBS about it.
Oh, I mean, yeah.
The only way forced fire stays in a into 50 is if it's some sort of, let's say, Russian election.
Well, we don't need to go there, but
yeah.
I don't hate fire. I prefer a vote, but I get the concept behind it, and it does add a little bit. But
fair enough.
Where was I on my notes? Oh, yeah. we have two duos here at Final Four, and the
That we
duos
do.
have played the game very differently. You have one that's been very out front about it, and one that nobody knows they're a duo except David.
And we're going to see this in a moment when we get to Final Tribal, which was really game defining.
Yeah. And so this is where we see Kamilla decide that her best shot at winning is for Kyle to be on the jury. And she decides if she wins, she's putting Joe and Kyle in fire. So we go to final immunity, and I wrote, whoa, simmotion is final immunity with like 3 of those little emojis with the duck face.
I have something to say, though, about this, because after watching players that seem like they're failing for now over 10 seasons, longer than that, I think I figured out simmotion this week.
You texted me this, and I've been excited to hear your answer.
Yeah, so here's my take if I ever play simmotion at Final Four. And I don't know if this would completely blow up in my face or not, but so many people, I think, get the sense of drop the ball and wait for the ball to be halfway down before they drop it again. It's logic. You want to have space in between.
Yeah.
I think the strategy to that is drop your first ball and count how long it takes to go down. Figure out, like Jeff said, that we got, how many balls did we get up to this season? 5?
I think so.
Yeah. I would say, let's say it takes, I don't know, 18 seconds for that ball to get out. Divide 18 by 3. Sorry, not by 3. My apologies. I'm talking randomly. I'm going to do the math while I have everybody here. If you divide 18 by, let's say, 6 to be safe, we have 3.
Yeah.
Therefore, my take is you want to have, and again, it could be longer, it could be shorter. I don't know. I'm just saying 18 seconds is random. That's what I am guessing watching the show that it would take. Therefore, let's say you are going to assume that the challenge is over by the time that you get 6 balls in. I'm going to drop my first ball, and if it is 18 seconds, like I'm guessing, I'm going to drop my second ball 3 seconds after my first ball, and drop my third ball 3 seconds after that second ball, making sure that rather than the balls being equally spaced out in the thing, which they won't be, that by the time I get to the maximum number of balls that I'm anticipating the challenge will go, they will be equally spaced out. So then you're reaching down 1, 3 seconds later, 2, 3 seconds later, 3, and really just moving in that completely every 3-second pattern, which gives you enough time to reach between the bottom and the top.
Interesting.
I think that's the way that you win this challenge.
Yeah. When's the last time we saw simmotion when it wasn't at like 5 or 4?
Oh, I don't know.
I just thought about it's basically only used as final immunity at this point.
Yeah. Maybe when it just like debuted, but
yeah. I think it'd be fun if we did final immunity like the Palau challenge where we're just standing on floating buoys.
Yeah, that would be amazing. I mean, Jeff might hate it after the Palau challenge, but I think there's a reason that a challenge that was that easy has never been done again.
On Pit Stop Pals, Kevin once called me production's worst nightmare when it comes to what I come up with, and I kind of understand where he's coming from, but they get their production. Surely they can figure out how to make these things work.
Yeah.
Last gasp, final immunity. That's still what I want to see most, but probably won't happen.
Just 2 seconds.
Yeah, so we're in simmotion. It comes down to
the last time simmotion's been used and it wasn't final immunity. Do you want a trick question?
Sure.
Within the game, it's only been used as final immunity.
Oh.
It's been used once without when it's not final immunity, and that was in South Pacific. It was a Redemption Island duel.
Nice. That's really interesting, actually. Let's make that a merge immunity next time.
That would be funny.
12 simmotions going all at once. Have fun following that, camera crews. But
simmotion was won by Christine on Redemption Island.
Oh, nice. So in simmotion, it comes down to Kyle and Joe. And as they're competing, I wrote down they overuse it for sure, but I gotta admit, simmotion is fun to watch. It's just entertaining for me. And Kyle wins final immunity, which is huge. He gets his spot at the final three. He gets to decide who's making fire.
Yeah. And really makes sense for the flow of this episode that the whole time we've been seeing Kamilla say that she needs to take out Kyle and have him be on the jury. And in contrast, it's going to completely flip at this point because Kyle's immune and his best chance of winning is to take out Kamilla.
Yeah, for sure.
And hope that she doesn't end up like Tosh, but she won't because she's trying to take out Kyle too.
Yeah. And so Kyle tells us that he's taking Joe to the end because he doesn't want to give Joe the jury momentum of a fire win going into final tribal, which is really smart.
Yeah.
And so we get back to camp. Kyle basically says, I'm bringing Joe. We see Eva practicing in the forest, practicing fire, struggling really hard, gets overwhelmed. Kyle hears her struggling from camp, which is, I don't know the word, but that was not something I expected to see.
No, it wasn't something I expected to see. That being said, all of these like struggling with fire scenes that we literally get every season makes me think that it's more emotional just based on how much pressure is on the players going into a fire making challenge, and that I really question the editing in terms of do they actually not know what they're doing, or are they just knowing that, hey, it's one thing to make a fire and it's another thing to make a fire with $1 million on the line.
Yeah, well, we see Kyle briefly consider putting himself in fire. And I don't know if that was wanting to make a move or feeling bad for Eva with how much she was going through it, but she insists on doing it herself. And I have a huge respect for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Joe helps her, and she gets better at it. So that was a really cool scene. And so, do you have anything else before we go into the fire tribal?
No.
So Kyle takes Joe to the end. And when he said that he made his promise to him, he made that promise. The jury looked kind of surprised.
Yeah, I was surprised. Do you remember this?
No, not really.
So it must have been something that we didn't really see.
And so we see right off the bat, Kamilla's struggling to get anything at all to catch. And then Eva gets a huge flame, but it's blowing to the side of the rope, and then it falls back down below. And she's discouraged. And even amidst the competition, we see Kamilla being really encouraging.
And I was screaming at the TV at this point because if you see that the wind is blowing your flame to the sideways, we've seen this before. There's no rule that says that you have to stay sitting on your stool. In fact, Kamilla was standing up to try to do her fire. I was like, Eva, just take a couple steps to the side and block the wind, and you've won the challenge.
I had a random thought, and this probably would be illegal, but my thought was, get a fire start, like, what's stopping them from, like, getting the flame going and, like, putting one of the sticks in it, and then when you catch the stick on fire, holding that, like, right below the rope. A flame burned through the rope.
Fair.
Like, I'm sure Probst wouldn't allow it. I'm 90% sure, but that thought
I'm sure there's more off-camera explanation of the exact rules, but that would be hilarious.
That thought crossed my mind for some reason, because I saw all the little sticks they had. I'm like, just light one and hold it under the rope.
See, I guess a lot of weird thoughts with fire making cross people's minds, because I thought that you were going to say, because I've thought this before, of when you see Kamilla struggling with the flint, why doesn't she just take one of the sticks and go stick it in the big central fire and light it?
I also thought, oh my god, I need to have Kevin clip this for TikTok. Our dumb fire thoughts. And again, my thought was also when Eva had this big flame blowing sideways, what if that catches one of the sticks that's holding the rope up and the whole mechanism breaks?
I would say you win with that.
Yeah, but the like holding the flame right under the rope was what popped into my head. And so, that's funny.
So I'd have to know, maybe I'd have to almost talk to a player who's been there and done that. Are those sticks actually sticks? Or are the pieces holding the metal up? Are the pieces holding the rope up made of like aluminum or steel?
True.
Because then they won't burn.
Yeah. The holding the little stick right under the rope is more what I want to see happen than anything after that, though.
Yeah.
Humor. But I do love how much, like, during the challenge, the two girls were, like, encouraging each other. That was really cool.
Yeah.
Like the sportsmanship.
That was. Absolutely.
Eva ends up winning and advancing to the final three. So we have Kyle. So
Kyle is, as I predicted, sitting with a duo in the final that now has to compete against each other as opposed to teaming up against him.
And we know in hindsight he wins. Eva puts up a really good fight, in my opinion.
She does. And we'll get to that in a bit, but let's just go back to the beach first.
Here's where I'm going. Kyle ends up winning. We know that. If Kamilla had won fire, do you think the result of final tribal changes as far as who wins?
I don't know. With the two of them sitting together, that's the one big. I think if Kamilla sits against Joe and Eva, Kamilla wins easy.
Yeah,
but I don't know if Kamilla wins or if it's a big vote split all over the place. And it's I was talking about this when we talked about with last week, is to me, I never know how to read those kind of things, but I honestly do believe there's a cultural divide between my interpretation and the jury's, because as a Canadian, think about our politics versus yours. We have 6 political parties. You guys have 2.
Well,
I think it's just in the nature, as we've seen in these juries time and time again, with Angelina getting no votes, with Julie getting no votes, with Michelle getting no votes, with every season in the new era up until now getting no votes, that we're almost in this. I honestly believe it's cultural that Americans tend to if they don't think their option can win, vote for the best winning option as opposed to the option that they want to vote for.
By the way, the libertarians would like a word with you for saying we only...
I'm sure they would. And I mentioned that we have 6 political parties in Canada, and we have a libertarian party, and they are not in the 6 that I mentioned.
Well, the Green Party would also like a word with you, and the
technically, if I want to use that logic in Canada, we have 38 options.
I don't know how many we have, because other than the libertarians, these third-party grass movements rise. The Tea Party was popular at one point. There was a Green Party at one point. I don't know.
We have a Green Party that actually elects people.
Oh, we only have red and blue that elect people.
Yeah.
But you didn't specify that. You said we only had 2 parties.
When I said 6, I meant ones that get over 3% of the vote, which is kind of what we consider to be a major or a minor party. But either way.
Yeah, I'm just joking.
I know. The audience is probably annoyed at me bringing up politics again.
Yeah.
To the audience, sorry, your co-host has a degree in Canadian and American politics.
Well, yeah. We are what do you have from the final three beats?
First of all, I'm glad we're getting this jury speaking scene again. I just love this.
Yes.
I especially think if you go back, like they always did it, but it used to be part of that like Ponderosa clip that they would put on YouTube that they don't do anymore. I'm still disappointed that that's gone. I know a lot of people are, but at the same time, I'm glad the jury speaking is actually in the show because, like, I always will cite whenever I see this the Korong Ponderosa clip, and it's like if you listen to that jury speak before final, you would have gone in not assuming it was a done deal for Abu.
Yeah.
And that you could hear before tribal count starts, what is Scott saying about Michelle? What's Julia saying about Michelle? What's Ty saying about Michelle? What's Debbie's take on the whole situation?
Well,
but instead,
we wouldn't have seen Ty with.
No, I said the name Ty instead of Jason. My bad.
Well, that's basically the same things.
Yeah. But the fact that this is in the episode, I think it really sets up final so well in the fact that we can actually get like, okay, here's who's leaning this way, here's who's leaning the other way, here's who's completely undecided, here's this person wants to see this out of the jurors or out of the finalists, and if they don't get it, they're probably going to switch their vote, whereas this other person is more focused on a different element of gameplay.
Yeah.
So I think this is just so good to be in the episode and not on YouTube because everyone really needs to get that initial reaction so that there's less just automatic accusations of the jury was bitter because they got voted out.
Yeah. That makes sense. And this was a fun scene. It was cool hearing from people.
Yeah, it was.
And I think one of the biggest surprises to me with the jury was like David at Final Tribal saying congratulations and telling a joke after just like glaring at them every week, faking.
Yeah, that was unexpected.
Voted out, and that was all just an act the whole time, I guess.
Well, I mean, David is in Hollywood, so that would make sense.
He looked like handsome Squidward the first time he showed up at Tribal.
That's funny.
Shout out to handsome Squidward, I guess. And so we go into Final Tribal. And my first note is once again, I haven't had this for a while, but being confused at how Chrissy thinks things work. Because she thinks Joe and Eva are going to have to betray each other now. Like, they've already reached the end. They're just arguing for their own game. Like, they don't have to betray and stab each other in the back or vote each other out.
He probably used the wrong word, but I guess what she meant to say and what I interpreted from that is that Joe and Eva are now in competition with each other as opposed to just automatically wanting each other to progress in the game.
But
They've progressed as far as they can together.
But everyone knows that already. I'm just confused.
Everyone knows that already, but that being said, you never know when a player who may be up against it, especially if they start having a couple of difficult questions, is going to be in a difficult situation and decide that they're going to roll over and campaign for their opponent.
Yeah. I did.
But in this case, all of them really try hard, and I'm so glad to say that everybody gets a vote here.
For the first time in the new era, I believe.
Longer than that. It's for the first time since, like, the 20s.
I guess so.
I mean, like, Ty didn't get a vote. Hannah didn't get a vote. Troyzan didn't get a vote. Ryan didn't get a vote. Loyal didn't get a vote. Angelina didn't get a vote. Julie didn't get a vote. Nora didn't get a vote. Michelle didn't get a vote. That's the whole 30s.
Wow. Okay.
And then we all know what's gone on in the new era. I have to go back even before that. I haven't even thought of it.
It's 29 is the last one then.
Yeah.
But
and I mean, that one even is blood versus water. Of course, everybody got a vote.
That's what I'm saying. And that, based on resumes, that probably should have been unanimous. Nothing against Jacqueline, but
yeah, nothing against Jacqueline, nothing against Missy, but of course, your fiance and your daughter are going to vote for you. Other than that, I don't know if that's really let's say, like they say in sports, sometime that one has an asterisk next to it.
Well, the season before that, all the finalists got votes too, but that one was a final two, and
that one was a final two. Yeah,
I don't know if that counts or not, but
no, I mean it does, but it's a different setup.
Yeah.
And before that, we would be in 27.
So another blood versus water.
Yeah, but different in that Jervis doesn't have a loved one on the jury, and he doesn't get a vote.
Poor Jervis.
Sherry doesn't get a vote in 26.
Forgot about her. She's the one that looks like Sandra Bullock, right?
Yeah. Is he who shouldn't be named the last third place player to get a vote before Joe? Maybe. I think so.
Well, Missy, technically.
Yeah, but I mean, from what we've been discussing. Wow. The last one to get a vote who's not from your family member.
We traced it all the way back to Nice.
That's funny.
Look at us. We're a couple of Survivor detectives here.
Yeah.
And so I also like from Final Tribal. I thought I wrote this down, I guess. Oh, here it is. Kyle reveals his history in custody, which is followed up by Eva dropping the bomb of like her scienciness.
Yeah.
And that she has these degrees and is going after a doctorate, and everyone's shocked by both of those. And Joe just adds a little bit of humor and goes, yeah, I'm just a dumb fireman.
Yeah, which was great because Joe's the one person who's been honest all along.
But like also at camp, as Eva was saying all this, and Kyle was saying that he's not actually a teacher anymore, that because Eva's like, oh, I was nervous talking teaching with you and Mitch because you guys knew what you were talking about. And Kyle goes, well, I'm actually a lawyer now. And Eva drops her thing. The look on Joe's face when this was all being revealed for the first time was fantastic. I forgot to mention that earlier. But Joe was just shocked to learn these things at camp the morning of Final 3. So,
yeah.
We also have a moment in Final Tribal where we see Eva reveal her safety without power that nobody knew about. That seems to have caught a couple of the jurors' attention. I wrote, is this the new secret idol again? Is this the secret idol again? Or could it be referencing 42? The answer was no, but I thought it could be. And this is... Up until one moment, I'm going to highlight. This was a really hard-fought Final Tribal between Kyle and Eva, I think.
Yeah, it was.
Joe kind of pressured a bit more than I expected him to, but...
I think Eva had a great opening, but she needed that great opening because, as we saw earlier, and I think this was smart because Kyle knew he'd get his chance, but... For the first couple of questions, and I don't know if it's edited that way or what, but Kyle is more on the back burner. And letting Joe and Eva just kind of try to see who can top each other within that duo.
Yeah, for sure.
And they're both speaking a lot more.
And so the moment where I knew it was over was Eva brings up the Sauhin vote, thinking it was her and Joe's move.
Yeah. And this was just brilliant, not only in how it's played out, but in the fact that instead of Kyle jumping into that whole debate, whereas he could have easily lost the moment, when he has Eva and Joe saying that this was a vote that we did, and then he could be another finalist just saying, oh, this is actually what I did, and who would know what to believe. Instead, we get this amazing moment where Kamilla is whispering to him, Kyle, I got you, Kyle, I got you. And it's what I called in the Chat BCC group, Speak Now, Camilla's version. And she just takes over the whole conversation and makes it indisputable that Kyle is going to be the one telling the truth because she knows all of the details already and just sets him up perfectly.
Yeah, and so we see her whisper that, and the conversation makes her way back to Kamilla, who asked Kyle to speak on the Sauhin vote, which is really smart. And at that moment, I wrote, Joe and Eva are both done. This is over now.
Yeah.
I referenced how with 45, the second D1 final immunity, I knew she had won. This was that moment for me this season. As soon as Kamilla set Kyle up to speak on the Sauhin vote, and he held it with I knew it was over at this moment.
Yeah.
I'm kind of hard on Survivor Twitter on this show. I do want to highlight, I forget who it was, some random fan that showed up on my For You, but said that what Kamilla did here for Kyle was what we expected Maria to do for Charlie.
Yeah. That is so well said.
It is. And that, of course, never came. I think the health is not even or strict. Oh, wow. And that, of course, famously never came with Maria and Charlie. I don't know if they, have a relationship or talk now. I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Which is sad, because they were
it is.
So much fun to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. But yeah, that's the best way you can say it, is that it just never happened in that season.
Yeah. And so when we're done with our speeches, they all three had good close. I feel like throughout the rest of Final Tribal, it was kind of a two-horse race. Joe kind of floundered a little bit. All three of them had good closing arguments, I thought. And we're going into the votes. And the first thing we see is Ced voting for Joe, which surprised me and threw me off immediately. I did not expect that from him, of all people.
Yeah.
Mary voted for Eva, which also surprised me, but I wrote in all caps, first New Era season where all three get votes. And then we read the votes, and Kyle wins 5-2-1. So,
which makes sense. I was surprised, and once we saw all three players get a vote, my mind just went into anything could happen here because we've never seen this in so long. But in the end, we get the result that we were expecting with a now clear second place winner in that, or second place finalist in that Star actually votes for Eva, which I did not expect at all.
I didn't either, but I was happy to see it.
Yeah.
So I guess that is a wrap on 48. Do you have any closing thoughts on this season?
I guess a good way to kind of close out any season, if you were to have 4 names, who would you want to see back from this season?
Thomas, Sauhin, Kamilla. There's a bunch of names running through my head right now, honestly.
I'm going to be honest, go with the exact same 3 you just said and add Bianca to it.
Bianca's a good one to add. I was thinking about her. I was thinking about Mary. And I was thinking about, I don't remember the name now. Mitch.
Yeah, that would be good.
Again, not a super strategic player, but I think could be good on a second chance. he knows the mistake he made. He waited too long. He said,
Yeah.
You can't just, and he's just so fun and likable.
Or we could even get a character season going and bring Say back to play with Rome, with Sydney, with pretty much any new era massive personality. That would be fun.
If we really want to go chaos, let's mix new era with with not limited to just new era, and throw Philip in there.
Yes, absolutely.
Philip, Coach, Rome, Say, we're on a good track here. Not a tribe I would want to watch, I don't think, but
I mean, it would be entertaining.
Yeah. Watching Say put up with Coach's nonsense all the time.
Maybe put War Dog on that season.
He who I'd be rooting for on this trip.
Nice.
So, do you have 3 names for a line blindside first boot?
Yeah, I do. I am going to give you Kyle is, as the locals claim, from the 4th largest city in America, which is not Philadelphia, Houston, or Boston, but is the borough of Brooklyn, New York. So I am going to give you 3 names from this from Brooklyn.
Okay.
So you are getting, for this aligned blindside first boot from last season, 47, Andy. Someone that I just brought up from season 41, Sydney. And from Survivor Millennials versus Gen X, Zeke.
I'm going to first boot Zeke just because, his game style is way too aggressive and fast for how I would want to play. And so I just don't think we'd mesh well. I'm going to blindside Sydney because I want to align with Andy. That guy just seems awesome to hang out with.
Nice.
So likable. And on the topic of Andy, shout out to Kevin Oliver, who subbed for you right after Operation Italy.
Yeah, I was so disappointed to miss that episode.
He's on the show and planted his flag on Andy is winning. I'm sure of it. And Andy was the next person to go home after that, either next or second. So
still, it was rough to see when I pulled into a cruise port that I'm everybody is talking about last night's episode and something called Operation Italy. And as a massive Genevieve fan, I knew nothing of what was going on.
Yes.
But thank you to Kevin for filling in for me for that iconic episode. Probably I would say easily best episode of the new era, possibly top 10 of all time.
See what happens when you go globetrotting all the time? You miss good episodes.
Well, next time I'm going on a cruise just in the United States next week.
Well, country trotting, I guess.
State trotting.
Yeah.
Up to the home state of the challenges Olivia Kaiser, Alaska.
Nice. So you'll briefly be out of the U.S. because you have to pass by Canada to get to Alaska.
Yeah, I go home on a cruise ship. I go from Vegas to Seattle to back into Canada to back to the U.S. to back to Canada to back to the U.S. to back to Canada.
That sounds wild to keep up with. So as we welcome a new era winner, I'm going to give you 3 of our.
Well, should I answer?
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah.
That's okay. I am going to align with Sydney, as you probably expected, who's one of my favorite new era players. I'm going to blindside Zeke. I've met Zeke. I think I'm the opposite. I think after his final tribal performance in Game Changers, I think he'd be a player I would like to work with, especially at this blindside phase where his game might be a bit too aggressive to go to the end, but would be excellent to have in my alliance and on the jury. And that leaves me to first boot Andy, who would be the biggest wild card probably of this group that you just don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah, that's true. And so,
All right.
pretend I didn't say all this a few seconds ago.
That's
We
okay.
welcomed a new member to the club of New Era winners tonight, so I'm going to give you 3 members of that prestigious club that now has 8 people in it.
Let me think of one name that I can guarantee Bruce is going to put on this list.
It's actually not, because I don't want to have to first boot that person when I do this. I thought about that, and I'm like, yeah, but when I answer, I have to first boot her, and I don't want to do that. So
Fair enough.
you get Kyle. He's the newbie to the club. I still want to brag, so I'm going to throw Kenzie in here, who I said was going to win at the merge episode of her season.
Okay.
And for the third one, just to throw some chaos in here, we'll throw the alligator at you.
Nice. I will first boot the alligator only because I didn't see.
Good nickname.
It is. I didn't see him winning the game at all. I didn't see him as a serious player until all the way to the end, and that is just too dangerous in this game.
I realized he was a threat to win as Probst was reading the votes and they had his name on them.
Yeah, exactly.
And I blame the way the season was edited. It's not his fault. It's not any of the players' fault. But I went into that thinking, okay, there's no chance he wins.
Absolutely. That leaves me that I'm gonna blindside Kyle. Kyle is probably of this whole group the first player I would think on like day one that I want to work with.
Yeah.
After we saw Kyle in Final Tribal Council, I don't want to go all the way to the end with him, though. I think that I'd be in a very similar spot to Kamilla to be like, let's work with Kyle as long as we can. Maybe she worked with him a little too long, notably the 5 vote, and then try to vote him out where he would be on that jury to use his skills as a lawyer to campaign for you. But instead, I would not want to be in a situation where I'm having Kyle use those same skills to campaign against me and support his own arguments. That leaves me to align with Kenzie, who I think would be an excellent ally. Clearly someone who's very likable, very loyal, and would be great on the island.
So I actually have the same answers. I'm first booting the alligator, and I am blindsiding Kyle just because he scares me. I mean, they all scare me. They've all won.
Yeah.
Solid games. Even if I didn't see one of their solid games, they won, so I'm convinced they played well because of that. Kenzie, I just think me and her would get along really well. I think we'd work together well. My one concern is she plays the same type of game that I would be trying to play.
Nice.
So if we're both sitting at the end, differentiating between us would be difficult for me maybe. But I'm scared of Kyle at the end after this past week. So
yeah.
And I just first booting the alligator because I don't know. That just feels right. I don't have a
Makes
solid
sense.
reason. I love that nickname so much, though. It's
Yeah.
so funny.
Either way, this was a great episode. We will be back with a couple of upcoming episodes. I guess on Wednesday, Survivor is launching the 50 cast. So, I mean, even though we're still a while out and we'll probably do it again, we are going to do a 50 cast review because everybody else is going to do it, and might as well get our thoughts out on this channel right away as opposed to waiting almost a year.
Yeah.
Hey, it's the alligator.
We'll rehash the cast assessment when it's right before the season also. So.
Yeah, exactly. And then we're also going to bring Kevin back, and we're going to do a fantasy draft results and rites of passage like we did last season for the first time. And Then we'll be into off season for a bit. We'll see how long off season goes because I mean at this point it won't be too long till Australia versus the world.
For sure. I can't wait.
I can't either. I've been George, Tony, Perv, and Shawnee all on one season is just going to be.
And David and
and David. Also. That's going to be fun considering that Perv is now going to be on her second show in the same year with David, even though they just met.
And this filmed after Dondi, so they're coming in with it. Have you watched David play Survivor before?
No.
It's fun.
I've watched Australian Survivor in what was it? I'm gonna give. It's been a while, but let me look up the season that I started on, and it wasn't Sandra's season. It was the one before that.
Oh, Brains versus Brawn.
Yes, that's it.
Haley's season. I love Haley. So.
No, Blood versus Water. I didn't see Haley's season.
Was Sandra.
Okay, then it was that season. My bad.
Yeah. The first Brains versus Brawn season was the season that produced George, and it gave us Haley, who we see.
I need to watch this then. I've never seen that.
It's good. So
I'll have to go find that online.
I would recommend it. So with all that being said, grab your torches, head back to camp. Bye, everyone.
Bye.